Earlier today, I made a video on my main channel at Ango, and I spoke a little bit about WWE's talks with Julia, who has become a massive standout from Stardom. And in that video, I went over the details about how far along those talks actually are, and according to PW Insider, they're pretty far along. It's actually to the point where WWE expects her to be at the Performance Center later this month, and it got me thinking about WWE's new strategy, but more specifically Triple H. Because Triple H could potentially be changing women's wrestling forever. Like, what Triple H could potentially be doing here will change the way that women's wrestling is perceived in America moving forward. Now, the thing is, if you're not familiar with Stardom, it is an all-female wrestling promotion based out in Japan. It has the same parent company as New Japan Pro Wrestling, and it's definitely making waves when it comes to some of the top talent that are there. But what's really intriguing about Triple H is, well, we just saw at Crown Jewel, Kairi Sane came back. Kairi Sane actually had an incredible match with Julia. And, well, obviously we have Asuka, and then we have Io Sky. Not to mention, we also have Blair Davenport from NXT, who has a lot of experience wrestling the women in Japan. And then we also got potential stars in the making like Tiffany Stratton and Fallon Henley. And we also have Roxanne Perez. And then we also have Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair and Charlotte Flair and Bayley. And look, guys, what WWE is doing here, it's pretty simple. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen right away. But I think WWE is gearing up to really make a change in women's wrestling. Now, let's just call it what it is. Women's wrestling has been a struggle in WWE. And it's not because of the talent, it's because the people who were booking it. But the people who were booking it before, the people that had a little bit of creative influence before, were the ones who were definitely pushing it back. And then Triple H comes out and we find out that Endeavor made the 100% decision that Vince McMahon will have no say in creative whatsoever. And when that decision was made, next thing you know, more women are showing up on TV. You see Chelsea Green and Piper Niven actually defending their women's championships, tag team championship belts. You see Nikki Cross back on TV. You're seeing a fatal five-way match at Crown Jewel for the Raw, well, it's the Women's World Championship belt. But you had Nia Jax and Rhea Ripley, and, you know, you have quite a few women in this fatal five-way match. Then you have another singles match between Io Sky and Bianca Belair. It got me thinking. I think Triple H is about to change women's wrestling forever because he has finally realized that it has not been pushed well in WWE. And that's why you're starting to see an immediate change. Now, I am not going to act like women's wrestling will change forever tomorrow. But what I am saying is that long term, it looks like Triple H is gearing towards making a major shift in the way that we all perceive women's wrestling. The reality is, by WWE bringing in Julia, they are taking arguably one of the hottest potential rising stars in professional wrestling. There's always been this rumor that maybe Julia would go to AEW, and obviously that is always a possibility until she signs on the dotted line. But the thing is, to change women's wrestling and to change the perception of it, it cannot happen by one signing. For a while, there was rumors that WWE could be bringing in Tam Nakano. There was rumors for a while that WWE could be bringing in Saray. We just found out today that Saray will be going to a new promotion in the United States, and she actually turned down WWE. But clearly there is an effort of Triple H looking at Japan as a major recruiting effort for women's wrestling in the WWE. And it's honestly a good strategy. See, the thing is, Triple H wants to blend two realities. The reality is that WWE is a sports entertainment-based product based on characters and storylines, character progression, and storyline progression. But Triple H also understands and respects the history of pro wrestling. It is one thing to tell great stories and have great characters, but it's another thing to also have really good wrestlers. Now, the thing is, the IWC currently looks at AEW as a really good wrestling promotion where you can find exciting matches. One of the largest criticisms that the IWC has for AEW is the continuity aspect of storytelling on a week-to-week basis. Now, no matter how formulaic or how simple WWE's storytelling is, people are watching every week and people are buying tickets every week because they are looking for the payoff. So if WWE continues to make key signings for the women's division, and they continue to tell week-to-week storylines, and you continue to see banger matches on television, what stops WWE from being the leader in women's wrestling? And at that point, I would argue there would be nothing. See, the reality is, in America, the number one wrestling booking of women has been Impact Wrestling. You may have heard me talk about this in the past before. Impact Wrestling, historically, never had to use women's wrestling as a PR trick, which WWE has, right? Ronda Rousey, WWE Evolution, the all-women's pay-per-view, right? But the booking never reflected this WWE Evolution with women's wrestling. Impact never had to tell people that their knockouts were great, but they had multiple women's matches or storylines on television on a week-to-week basis. Then NXT 2.0 becomes a thing, and all of a sudden, women's wrestling is a big deal in NXT. They bring in some notable names. They're bringing in people through the Performance Center. They're bringing some indie standouts, and what they do is they put them on TV across multiple storylines, multiple segments, multiple promos, multiple video packages, and people look at Shawn Michaels in NXT and say, wow, this is good. They're like actually consistently using their women's stars, which was not what was happening on the main roster. But now you're starting to see a change on the main roster as well. So if you're bringing in Kairi Sane, Io Sky, Asuka, Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, if you're bringing in Shayna Baszler, if you're bringing in Blair Davenport, if you're bringing all of these other people and you're putting them on television and you're putting them in great storylines and you're reconditioning your audience to putting on great matches, then you leave a certain impression on your fans that you can expect more great things from the women's division. It's almost like Zelina Vega versus Rhea Ripley months and months ago, where the crowd was going absolutely insane. The reason why was because WWE let them wrestle. Already a good storyline in the mix, but they let them wrestle. The crowd was going crazy. See, WWE has to recondition their audience. That's the reality, and it doesn't happen overnight. It does not happen overnight. You have to recondition your audience to understand that wrestling is important, because under Vince McMahon's direction, that wasn't always the case. And I always say it's important to have a blend of two, the storytelling and the wrestling aspect. A good wrestling match for me personally does nothing for me. I could watch good wrestling matches on the indies. That doesn't mean I shut it off if it's just a good wrestling match, but I like to see storytelling. I like to see characters. I like to see video packages. I like to see the purpose in it. And that is something that has been missing from women's wrestling in America for a while. So yeah, WWE signing Julia is a game changer. But I don't think it starts and stops with Julia. I think it shifts. It starts with a shift in how the women are perceived. And therefore, they got to book great women's matches. Keep in mind, WWE brought in Jade Cargill, somebody who oozes charisma and star power, but she isn't the greatest pro wrestler in the ring. Now imagine you get Jade Cargill to really kill it in the ring. Now you're starting to shift everybody's perception that this is where you should watch women's wrestling. I fully expect WWE to get more people from Stardom. I do. And I think, if they're able to do that, I think people will be looking at women's wrestling in America a lot differently than they have in the past. And this type of move that Triple H could be making is one that we expected from Tony Khan. And that's something that's interesting because I expected it from Tony Khan. And it hasn't come from Tony Khan. And if WWE makes these key signings, if WWE is doing these new things with the women's division, I think WWE is going to be a powerhouse. In an area where, truth be told, I would have never expected it. It's pretty insane.